we need to take a sidebar here just for a second. Steganography and the concepts of steganography can be used to protect intellectual property. What we would do is we would watermark. And in this case, what we actually do is we tell somebody through revealing our steganography that we're actually tracing their behavior or tracking their behavior. You may have seen that you've gotten a video, and on the bottom of the video it would say, this video has been specially encoded for you. Actually, this happens when all the Oscar nominees are being voted upon by the Academy. What they actually do is they actually send all of the movies to the people who vote for the Academy. Those movies are encoded with their name on the bottom. This is not for public distribution. This is for Dean Bushmiller and the Academy Awards, blah, 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 voting. And it's printed on the bottom of the film, and it's injected into the film at certain intervals, and it's really difficult to pull out. So we can provide automatic audits of radio transmissions in some cases. And this actually happened to me. I talked to a friend of mine who worked for Sony Music, and he said the way we figure out how many plays a song is getting is we actually turn on audio listening devices for all of the different stations that are out there, and there's a DTMF tone. It's a subharmonic tone that is actually encoded into the music that tells you this particular music is from this artist. You've seen that before. If you've ever used Pandora and you've actually held your phone or mobile device up to a set of speakers and the music is playing across it, what it's doing is it's not listening to the music, it's capturing the DTMF tones and sending them back to either Grace Notes or one of the other tools that is out there, and it's actually picking up all of that information and sending it back and saying, what song is this? And it goes and it looks inside the catalog and it says, oh, this is your favorite song by this particular artist on this particular year. That's why Pandora sometimes doesn't work. If you've ever gone into an organization or a restaurant where they have some sort of paid media music, something like Muzak is what it used to be called, and you actually tried to do the exact same thing with Pandora, it would not register because the DTMF tones are not there in that particular music. So we can track audio transmission and how often a song is played by listening to those subharmonics. We can embed copyright statements in files. When I actually purchased the ISO documents, the international standards documents, what will happen most of the time is printed on the bottom of each one of the PDF pages, and somewhere embedded in the document it says, this one copy is for Dean Bushmiller of Expanding Security and was issued to him for personal use on this date and time. Now, if I get that, I say, okay, well, you know, this is good. I'd like to share this with somebody. But what prevents me from sharing it with somebody is, well, my name's on this. And if I give it to you and you give it to them and somebody else, and then the ISO standards body comes back and they get a hold of a copy of this because it was posted to some server out there online, like the Pirate Bay, well, they're going to say, hey, you didn't protect this intellectual property like we agreed when you purchased this, and we're going to fine you. So I know that, so I'm just not going to transmit this intellectual property at this point. So watermarking, visible and invisible. Most of the time we do visible for documents and invisible for audio and video. We do this to protect that intellectual property, and we want to be able to trace it back to a particular individual. Steganography and watermarking are very different. Watermarking is overt. Everybody knows that it's going on. Watermarking is for protecting intellectual property, whereas steganography is protecting data from detection in most cases. Now, we're not talking about imaging the source drive, which is a lot of what we're talking about in steganography. Here, when we're talking about images, we're talking about pictures. We're talking about JPEGs, BMPs, and GIFs. We use images in steganography because they are a sufficient carrier size and they have enough places to change the data within it that is imperceptible to the people who are unaware of the steganography, And also, when you do analysis against it, unless you're doing a lot of computationally intense analysis, you're never going to detect this. Your data loss prevention tools just don't pick it up. So we're going to learn about images here because these images can be distorted in a variety of ways. So let's talk graphic files here. These could be any kind of graphic files. Here we're talking about digital graphic files. As an investigator, you need to identify the images and file fragments. You need to repair the damaged images and file headers. You do that quite often, not because of a steganography issue, but because you say, okay, this image is on this machine, and we want to repair it, and maybe want to pick up the EXIF data to find out the GPS coordinates of where this picture was taken. We can tie that picture being taken to the presence of a particular adversary in our court. So investigators need to understand imaging purely from a standpoint of this real image, not used for steganography, but this real image can tie somebody to a particular activity that is illegal. So when we talk about graphics files, remember you can use all sorts of different scales out there. The CMYK or the RGB, that's the red, green, blue, index color, and grayscale. When we look at image file graphics, they can be either vector or raster, and we're going to work with both of those types of images. We're going to talk about how they actually come to be and look at the common image file formats that you would see. So let's talk raster just for a second here. So raster is a composition or a collection of pixels. It's dots. It's a finite fixed number of dots. And the quality of raster images is all based upon the number of pixels or dots that you have there and the information presented in each pixel. Number of pixels is fixed up front. You say, I'm taking this image, this is my raster image, and I'm done. And when I enlarge that image, I'm going to lose quality. Now, most of the time when we talk about pixels, we're talking about 3 different bits, 8-bit values on those color values. The intensity of the amount of red, blue, and green is measured from 0 to 255. 0 being 0 on an 8-bit scale, and 255 being all 8 bits turned on in a 255 scale. That tells us the amount of red, the amount of green, and the amount of blue that we are using in any one pixel in this image. And then we have all of the pixels there inside of the image. So let me ask you a question. If we were taking a raster image, a picture, and you had a camera out, and you pulled your camera out, how many megapixels is your camera? And see, what we're doing is we're saying that the number of pixels that you can capture with your camera when you shoot with that camera is fixed by the tool that you're using. And each one of those pixels that you capture has 8 bits of value in it. Most of the time when we're talking about raster images, we're talking about BMP, JPEG, and GIF. I'm sure that there are others. Vector images, file sizes of vector images are relatively small, and this is very different. The other one we said, this is a finite number of pixels, and here's all of our data present. Vector graphics say, you know what, we're not going to do that. What we're going to do is we're going to create geometric shapes, and they're going to be turned into calculations. The great thing about vector images is that the fixed amount of data that's presented there, we can stretch that and make that a larger picture, and since it's functions based on triangles, squares, and polygons, we can stretch that image out and it doesn't lose any of its quality because the length of the line does not matter as long as the equation is kept consistent. So this represents images in computers. And because each image is basically an equation, we don't have any distortion, we don't have any fuzziness in that image. Vector files can be converted into raster files. I don't know if it can go the other way, but let's pause here and then I have a question for you.